This is a presentation on the Mishmaros of Kohanim. So Mishmaros were groups that the Kohanim were divided into. Now the Kohanim were divided into 24 groups, and each group got to do the Avodah in the Beis HaMikdash for 1 week. And every 24 weeks, the cycle would restart. And the rule was that only Kohanim from that week's Mishmar were allowed to participate in the Avodah of each week. So for example, over here, it's week number 1, it's the green groups. So the other two groups, the blue and the orange, are not allowed to do the Avodah in the Beis HaMikdash that week. Now there's different rules for Mishmaros on Yom Tov. The rules of the Mishmaros were different on Yom Tov. So on Yom Tov, any kohen from any mishmar was allowed to do the avodah in the Beis HaMikdash. However, this was only if it was part of the avodah connected to the Yom Tov, and not the regular daily avodah of all year round, where there only the kohanim of that week's mishmar were allowed to do those avodas. Now, when it comes to Yom Tov, we have Korbanos Musaf. So the special Korbanos of each Yom Tov were called Korbanos Musaf. Now, all Korbanos Musaf consisted of two types. There were oilus and there was a chatos. So the oilus consisted of bulls, rams, and sheep. So they're parim, elim, and kvasim. And the amount of each of these animals was not the same on each Yom Tov. And then there was a chatos. So there was one chatos on each Yom Tov, which was a goat, a sir izim. Now we have the Korbanos Musaf of Sukkos. So the following were the Korbanos Musaf of Sukkos. The bulls started with 13. So the first day there was 13 of them, and then went down by 1 each day, meaning that on the final day, the 7th day of Sukkos, there were 7 bulls. Then the rams, there were 2 rams each day. Then there were 14 sheep each day, and those were all the oilus. And then finally, we have the 1 goat for a chatos. Now, how did this work when it came to the Mishmaros? So on all 7 days of Yom Tov, there were either extra or enough Korbanos for each Mishmar to bring 1 carbon. So this is referring to all 7 days of Sukkos, and later we'll also talk about Shmini Atzeres. So let's see how this works out. On the first day, the 13 bulls, 2 rams, and 1 goat were enough for 16 Mishmaros. 13, 2, and 1 is 16. For the remaining 14 sheep, so 2 Mishmaros brought 1 sheep. So we have over there now a total of 18 animals, but we only used 2 of the sheep. There's another 12. And so 6 mishmaros brought 2 sheep. And only those who brought a sheep could bring 2 on that day. So a mishmar that brought 2 korbanos was bringing 2 sheep, not 2 bulls or any other combination of animals. Now let's get into greater detail over here. So let's say over here we have the 24 mishmaros. Here are all the animals. So on day 1, as we can see at the end, 6 mishmaros, numbers 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24, each brought 2 sheep. On day 2, we lose 1 of the cows, number 13. So everything moves over, and now only 5 mishmaros will bring 2 sheep. Now we need to point out over here that the mishmaros would take turns about who got to bring a bull, who got to bring a par, because that was the most desirable carbon. And so they took turns to bring the parim. As we'll see later, a little more about how that works. Now we move on to day 3, and as we'll see, the bull of number 12 disappears. And now the korbanos shift further. And now, as we can see, only 4 mishmaros have 2 sheep. And this continues each day. Another bull goes away from number 11, and now only 3 mishmaros will bring 2 sheep. Number 10's bull disappears, and then it goes down to 2 mishmaros are bringing 2 sheep. On day 6, again, we lose a bull, and only 1 mishmar brings 2 sheep. And on the final day, there's an exact amount of korbanos, and each mishmar brings 1 carbon. Because we have 7 bulls, 2 rams, and 1 goat, which totals 10. And then we have the 14 sheep. So 10 and 14 is 24, 1 carbon for each mishmar. Now moving along, on day 8, so on this day, Shmini Atzeres, there was only 1 bull, 1 ram, 7 sheep, and 1 goat. So basically the bulls went down to 1, the rams went from 2 to 1, the sheep went from 14 to 7, and we remain with the 1 goat. So this is a total of 10 korbanos. And so what they did over here is they would revert to the usual practice on other Yom Tevim of making a raffle which mishmar would get to bring a carbon. Now, one more thing that we need to point out over here, which we mentioned previously, is that the Mishmaros took turns for bringing a bull. So each Mishmar wanted most to bring the carbon of a bull, of one of the parim. Now, the total number of bulls during the entire Sukkos was 70. starting with 13 and working our way down to 7, totals 70 bulls. So therefore, 22 Mishmaros got to bring 3 bulls, because 22 times 3 is 66. And 2 Mishmaros only got to bring 2 bulls, so 2 times 2 is 4, 66 and 4, total 70. So that's how we get that 22 Mishmaros got to bring throughout Sukkos 3 bulls, and 2 Mishmaros only got to bring 2 bulls. So now let's see a visual of this. So on day 1, we have 13 parim. On day 2, we're going to be down to 12. Now who gets to bring the parim on day 2? Not the ones that brought on day 1. So it's going to be from 14 to 24. But there's still an extra one. So number 1, the first Mishmar will again bring a par on the second day. On day 3, we need to take 1 par away. So let's take it from the first Mishmar. And who's going to bring the parim now? It's going to go from Mishmar number 2 and on, up to Mishmar 12. On day 4, we lose 1 par. And then who's going to bring the parim? From Mishmar number 13 and on. Then on day 5, we lose another par from Mishmar number 22. And who is going to bring the parim? From Mishmar 23 and on. And as we go through this, each day taking away 1 par and then moving the parim to the next Mishmaros, we'll see ultimately how on the 7th day it'll come out that everybody already brought 3 parim except for Mishmaros number 23 and 24, who only brought 2 parim.